Friday night comes straight to your home.
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. Tonight on the show, we've got editor-at-large with the Sunday Mail, Charlotte Griffiths. Also, he's back, the pub bore. Matthew Stadlin, he's back as Left in the Corner. We've got legendary Chelsea footballer Kerry Dixon and top actor and former professional boxer Chris Evangelou. But first, let's go to the news.
Good evening, I'm Sophia Wensler with your headlines at 7 o'clock. MMA fighter Conor McGregor says he intends to appeal after a woman who accused him of raping her won a claim against him for damages in a High Court civil case. Nikita Hand has been awarded £206,000. However, she has lost her lawsuit against Conor McGregor's friend, James Lawrence, who she also accused of raping her in a Dublin hotel in 2018. Mr McGregor posted on X saying he was disappointed with the verdict and would appeal, while Ms Hand spoke outside the court, saying the weeks of her civil case against the fighter have been a nightmare. Ukraine's military has, for the first time, confirmed the use of British-made Storm Shadow missiles inside Russian territory. It comes after the UK vowed to continue supporting Ukraine following threats from Putin to strike the UK. The Russian leader confirmed the country had tested a new intermediate-range weapon in response to Ukrainian missile strikes earlier this week. He also added that Russia are entitled to strike those countries who supported Ukraine. Downing Street has indicated that Benjamin Netanyahu faces arrest if he enters Britain after an international arrest warrant was issued. Number 10 refused to explicitly comment on hypotheticals, but said the UK would follow its legal obligations. It comes after the International Criminal Court issued a warrant for the Israeli Prime Minister and his former Defence Minister, Yoav Gallant, over alleged war crimes in Gaza. In other news, 2 people who were detained over a suspect package which led to the closure of Gatwick Airport today have now been released. Sussex Police says the package reported has been made safe by officers from a bomb disposal team and the airport has now been handed back to its operator. The 2 people who were detained have been released and allowed to continue their journeys. Thousands of airline passengers were delayed after Gatwick Airport's South Terminal was evacuated because of the security alert. Travellers were unable to check in for more than 4 hours due to the incident earlier today. And Donald Trump has been granted permission to seek dismissal of his hush money criminal case in which he was found guilty earlier this year. It comes in light of his victory in the November 5th US presidential election. The judge presiding over his trial has also agreed to delay the sentencing, which was scheduled for next week. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. I'm Lee Anderson, the Reform UK Member of Parliament for Ashfield, and joining me today is Charlotte Griffiths, who's the editor-in-large at the Daily Mail. Got that right, didn't I?
Editor-at-large, the Mail on Sunday.
Mail on Sunday, apologies. And he's back, Mr. Popular himself, Matthew Stadlin, political commentator, and our Left in the Corner. Thanks for coming back today.
The people who they love to hate me, I think.
I think they just hate you, Matthew, to be honest. But anyway, don't go there just yet. It could get a bit feisty.
I'll tell you, Lee, that if Starmer doesn't start turning this around, then the whole Labour government could be left in the corner.
You heard it here first. I think Matthew's going to join the Reform Party. But let's get to it. This week on Whitehall, Charlotte, we had 10,000 farmers and their families children, tractors galore, speeches, people rebelling, really. It's the first proper peaceful march I've actually seen on Whitehall for a long, long time. They're very, very angry at our farmers. But the one thing that we need to be aware of, I think, is food shortages. You know, if the farmers really start to, you know, have a go at this government, there could be a lack of food on our shelves, panic buying. That's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, I think the protest was so peaceful, so dignified, and the nation is sort of behind the farmers because of that. But if they tried to disrupt the food chain, you know, maybe the nation might not be behind them after all. But I think they probably should, because they've got to make a stand. And John McTernan said, we're going to smash the farmers like we smashed the miners. I mean, it's almost an invitation, isn't it?
Yeah.
To disrupt the food chain. And, you know, we could see the kind of food hauling like we did with COVID with the loo rolls, couldn't we?
Matthew, smashing the farmers, that's not a good look, is it, in this?
Well, I find that astonishing, Charlotte, that you would encourage farmers to disrupt our food chain. That is completely against the national interest, and it would be in order to protect their freedom from inheritance tax on multi-million-pound properties. Now, I have some empathy and some sympathy for some of those smaller farmers, but the idea that the way to respond in a democracy isn't just to protest, fine, that's your right, but actually to withhold food, yeah, also your right, but I think that would turn people against them very, very quickly.
I think they would do well to remind the nation how much food British farmers provide. It's 60% or more even. And, you know, it's really important that we eat our own food and we don't import chlorinated chicken from America or strike up new trade deals with farmers abroad. You know, and I think they would do well to just remind the nation, you know?
We all sit here, Matthew, we've all had breakfast this morning, I would imagine. I've probably got British food in my belly now as we speak. And you talk about the farmers not affecting the food supply as such, and you wouldn't support that. But, you know, people on your side of politics supported doctors and nurses withholding their services to save people's lives. How does that work out?
Well, it's a bit different, isn't it?
It's not.
Because, well, you asked me the question.
Yeah.
There are families up and down the country who are paying inheritance tax above a certain rate. Farmers, for years and years, have been free of that. And the question is, why should they be free of that? Why is there a special pleading for farmers? When we're talking about nurses, nurses have been paid, I would argue, very low wages, and most of them will not have any sort of inheritance to look forward to. Yes, we need our farmers to work because they provide roughly 50% of our food. But no, I don't think they should threaten our food.
But it's not. They're not making a profit on this, Matthew, because they're passing the farm, Charlotte, onto their family to grow food to feed us. It's the only way a farmer's ever going to be rich is to sell all his property, sell his land, sell his tractors, his combine harvesters, and bank the money and go and live in Spain somewhere.
Yeah, they're custodians of our land. They're actually doing us a favour. This is Britain's green and pleasant land. It's a fundamental thing about being British is to protect our green and pleasant land. And they're doing that for us for very little money. They're working their socks off. They're working more than public sector workers who are working 4-day weeks for 5 days pay in some cases. And actually they're doing us a real favour because they work morning, noon and night. They're milking on Christmas Day. And we owe them.
OK, so I'm a Londoner, so you might call me a townie.
Yes, you are.
But during my childhood...
Oh, yeah.
Hang on.
You're going to go on about the farm thing? About
You're like Starmer.
Let me give you a scenario. So during my childhood, I spent up to 16 weeks a year on a farm. And I honestly have enormous respect, always have done, for how hard farmers work. They literally, in some cases, work 365 days a year. It is true that some of them are very, very wealthy, but cash poor. And as I said, I have some empathy for them. But let me give you this scenario very quickly. Imagine a farmer who has £5 million worth of farm, and they want to pass that down. Is that really what's going to happen? Because if they've got 2 children, a son and a daughter, or 2 sons, 2 daughters, if they pass that farm down and keep it whole, that farm is going to have to go to one of those children if one of them lives in a town and wants to do something else. What happens to the inheritance of the son or daughter who lives in the town? In other words, what I'm saying is this really about protecting family farms, or is it about not paying inheritance tax?
I've never switched rubbish in all my life, Matthew, and that's pretty good.
I mean, remembered he's a farmer.
16 weeks on a farm. I mean, if that was Rachel Reeves, she'd claim she was a farmer on the CV as well, wouldn't she? Come on, Charlotte.
That's what Keir Starmer's doing. He's just suddenly remembered that his father wasn't just a toolmaker, but also a gamekeeper, or he's got actually his family are all farmers now. He's just decided.
It's unbelievable.
But actually, he's an Islington townie economy. He has no respect for the countryside and no real understanding of the countryside. And I'm sorry, 16 weeks a year doesn't qualify you to know about the countryside either.
I know a lot more about the countryside than most of the people commenting on this. And what I would hang on, what I would say to you guys is you are part of the right-wing bandwagon, the latest bandwagon that rolls into town and you leap on it. Whereas we've a very serious point. This week, we discovered that more than a third of children in this country are living in poverty and a quarter of adults. I don't see reform out marching because children are in poverty in enormous numbers. Get out on the streets and protest for a better way of life for the impoverished children of Britain.
So impoverished children in Britain under a Labour government, while Sir Keir Starmer is hobnobbing it all around the world on his private jets, chatting nonsense to anybody that'll listen to him.
Well, that's the other thing that Starmer's doing. He hasn't even come back to the UK. I really think he should have been in London for these protests, listening to them instead of gaslighting them and telling them, actually, you've got your numbers wrong. It seems to me he's done his numbers and Rachel has done their numbers on the back of a fag packet.
Yeah. How can you say that, Charlotte? He is showing leadership in an uncertain, unstable world with multiple wars going on. He's building relationships with other G20 countries.
Building relationships? Let me just come back on this, Charlotte. I like to be impartial on this show.
Really?
Yes, but building relationships. He sent 100 Labour Party members over to the US to campaign to keep Donald Trump out of office. How is that building relationships?
Starmer and Lammy had dinner with Trump.
Don't mention Lammy.
They did.
Oh, dear.
Hang on. Starmer and Lammy had dinner with Trump and they're building a relationship with him because they're grown-ups.
He's hobnobbing in Rio with Trudeau, the most fashionable and sort of handsome politician there is there. I think he's been really taken by the flashy lifestyle, the jets, the free clothes, the Taylor Swift tickets. And he needs to be... You know, these farmers get up on Christmas morning at 5 a.m. and milk their cows, and they're freezing cold. He should be on the ground listening to them.
Our Prime Minister should be out in Downing Street, outside Downing Street, being abused by farmers. What he's been doing is he's actually been doing something incredibly difficult, which is building a relationship with Xi, the leader of China. Now, we might have all sorts of different views on that, but he's taking a pragmatic approach in what he thinks is a national interest, rather than listening to a tiny echo chamber, some of whom I have sympathy for.
He's not listening at all.
Sorry, Matthew. I think next time, before you come on, we need to breathalyse you. Come back on that one, Charlotte, please, because this is nonsense.
I think he could have put off the meeting with Xi. I think, you know, he's not listening to the farmers. And even from abroad, he's gaslighting them. He's not giving any statements saying, look, I hear what you're saying. We're going to think about it. You know, he doesn't have to do a U-turn if he doesn't want to do a U-turn, but he could adjust the parameters. And it looks like those sums aren't working out. So he could admit, you know, him and Rachel Reeves could adjust the parameters.
Surely, Matthew.
Show that they're listening.
Surely, Matthew, admitting that you're wrong and changing is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness.
Depends whether you think you are wrong. Now, I would be applying for a job as a Minister of Disinformation if I were to say Labour haven't got off to the best of starts. You know, or if they have got off to the best of starts, because they haven't, have they? If you think about the winter fuel allowance, if you think about taking on farmers in this way, I'm not convinced it was properly thought through. It is also true that just last year, a Labour figure, now a Secretary of State, said that there would be no change to agricultural property relief.
That's right.
And that has immediately changed in quite a sudden way. And that's why I have a lot of sympathy for these farmers, or one of the reasons I have sympathy for them. But remember, the thrust of the idea was to make sure that very wealthy people don't buy up land in order to avoid great swathes of inheritance.
But that's exactly what's going to happen, because when these farmers don't pass their farms down, who do you think is going to buy the land? Random foreign investors and, you know, businesses and other people.
And probably fill the fields full of solar panels as well and not produce food. But let's get back to the point we originally raised, Charlotte, which was food shortages. You know, we saw it during COVID, didn't we? People panic buying. One whiff of shortages, and they just empty the shelves.
They do. I mean, remember those loo rolls that people... But even I bought a few too many loo rolls, I have to admit. I feel completely stupid now. So I hope that doesn't happen again. And I think because of packaged food in the supermarket aisles, we'll never actually fully starve. But you know, I do think farmers should remind us all how much they do. But one thing I would say is,
they should do
if they
shouldn't do it.
If they start pouring away milk, because cows have to be milked, so they will. If they start pouring away milk just to make a point, I think they might lose the nation. They've got to be very careful and strategic about what they withhold.
Are you calling for them to withhold food or not? Because you said you hope it doesn't happen, but at the same breath, you're saying you think they should teach us a lesson.
I think they should teach us a lesson by withholding some food, but they need to be careful for their own PR machine. Not if they're seen pouring away milk that has to be, cows have to be milked.
Matthew,
then they might lose us.
Matthew, are you going to be running down the high streets of Notting Hill with a wheelbarrow full of toilet rolls over the next few weeks?
Well,
It's a reasonable question.
What do you think the answer to your question is?
Probably yes. Yeah. Is the Waitrose there? Not the real world, Matthew, is it?
I think the real world is wherever human beings live, and indeed don't live.
It is a serious point you raised, Charlotte, about public opinion. At the moment, it's massively on the side of the farmers. But if there are food shortages in the near future, it's a very fine line between supporting them and the people are going to get hacked off pretty quickly, aren't they?
Yeah, so I think they need to just manage it, keep it short and sharp, the shocks. But also, the thing that I really wish would stop is the sneering at these farmers. I feel like Starmer has fallen into that trap of the Islington elite of sneering at farmers for wanting to pass down what's theirs from generation to generation.
I don't think Starmer's doing any such thing, and I'm left-leaning, and I was broadly supportive of this government coming into power, and I hope they get things right. Yeah. But there's absolutely no planet on which I am sneering at farmers. And I've witnessed them bringing their tractors home at 10 o'clock at night after dark.
There you go. Our very own GB News country bumpkin. That's Matthew Stadlin, ex-farmer and political commentator. Charlotte, thank you very much. Coming up next, we're going back in the day with former Chelsea footballer Kerry Dixon.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Recruiters are warning that if you're not tech savvy, you could be missing out with your CV failing to make it through an AI-powered sifting process. So we've gone from sort of computer says no HR people ticking boxes to AI, right? Is that right?
Yes, well, this applies once you're in the job as well, as a recent report revealed that employees expect AI will manage an average of a third of their tasks within the next 12 months. Well, joining us now to discuss this is Cosmo Curry, founder of Van Kaizen, a leading company in technology recruitment.
Morning, Cosmo.
Morning.
Good morning. Well, yeah, thank you
for
joining us. It's very interesting, isn't it? Because AI is, of course, on the rise and now in the workplace and in universities and things. Another article came to mind. There was a student recently, I think it was in the news just the other day, that got in trouble for using AI. So there's for exam purposes and essays. So there's lots of different ways that it can be a good thing and a bad thing. But you're, of course, here to talk about the ways in which AI is a good thing within the workplace.
Absolutely. I mean, AI is here to stay, for sure. And we're seeing this rise of people using it in such a clever format. And the other side of it is also we're seeing people who are using it and during the process of that, they are losing their character. We're losing the actual insight into the individual behind that. And so we've kind of got this kind of mix. And I think AI is phenomenal when you're looking at it from a point of view of optimization, point of view of speed, getting results. But I think we have to remember that the fundamental of recruitment is people. And we cannot substitute the people, the personal aspect, by replacing that with AI.
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Lee Anderson's Real World. I'm joined by a legendary footballer, ex-Chelsea striker, England striker, fantastic goal-scoring record for England. It's Kerry Dixon, who I saw play 1985 for Chelsea at Field Mill in Mansfield. I think it was 2-2. And you beat us back down at Stamford Bridge. Kerry, tell me, why did you become a footballer?
It's something you always wanted to do. Growing up in Luton, you know, I love football. Not any particular team, because in them days you supported the hometown club, and Luton Town was everything for me. I used to go and watch them. I played in what is now the academy from the age of 11. Wanted to score goals. Got kicked out at 16. Well, say kicked out. Didn't get taken on as an apprentice.
Released.
Yeah, released. That's the way you. But they took on 16 out of 18, and David Pleat, the man who released me at the time, really it broke my heart. Yeah. Because then I went on to be a toolmaker. I had to find a job and play football part time.
So you was a proper toolmaker.
I was a proper toolmaker. Yeah.
How does that feel then at 16, 17-year-old, Kay, to be, you know, after you've spent all them years at the club wanting to be a professional footballer? It must be heartbreaking.
It was. But life goes on at the time, and it was one of the first knocks you have in life. Got a second one 2 years later because I joined Tottenham, and I spent a year there as a part-time pro. Top scored in the South East counties for them, and got told I weren't good enough again.
Wow.
So I was released again at 18.
2 lots of rejection.
2 lots.
Then where?
Well, I went to Dunstable Town. I top scored in the Southern League, and Reading took me from there. 3 years at Reading, and then, as I say, the rest is history. I joined Chelsea in '83, and you saw me in '85.
I did see you in '85, and you was, well, you're still a legend at Chelsea, aren't you? You know, how many goals did you score for Chelsea?
193.
Is that all? Now, 8 appearances for England as well. How many goals for England?
4.
That's some goal scoring record as well, isn't it? What was the highlight of your playing career, Kerry?
Well, in terms of where you wanted to go, you asked about why did you want to be a footballer. Standing in the Aztec Stadium when you're going to get capped for England for the first time, the national anthem being played, and there on in, it was going to be Kerry Dixon, Chelsea and England.
Aztec Stadium, that's Mexico, isn't it?
It was, yeah, in '85, yeah.
God.
Score on the debut was probably the highlight.
Yeah. And what about club football highlight? Because, you know, there's a bit of a twist to this story, isn't there? Because David Pleat rejected you when you were 16, then fast forward 16 years, he's come knocking on your door again.
He did, yeah. At the age of, I think it was 33 exactly, not 33, 34. I spent 2.5 years at Luton, and it was David that signed me back. So as much as there was heartbreak at 16, there was elation many years later that I got back to play for my hometown club.
So you must have played against some great defenders back in the 80s, some real hard men, and a little bit different to what it's like now, Kerry, where they're just falling over all the time, these forwards. And it was not
necessarily forwards that fall over. I think everyone, lots of people are falling over.
Give me an example of some of the toughest centre-halves or full-backs you came up against that used to give it to you.
Well, there's the word tough, hard, you know, dirty. Yeah, dirty. It's how you interpret the word.
Yeah.
The best all round for me was Tony Adams.
Yeah.
Adams was good at Arsenal. I played against some good centre halves as pairs. You know, Bruce and Pallister at United.
Yeah.
As a pair, Hansen and Lawrenson, very good at Liverpool. I'm not going to say the dirty part. We're on orange juice, and you know, perhaps it'd be better.
Well, like Des Walker, I used to watch him play.
Des was a great player.
Yeah.
Nottingham Forest. Steve Chettle was his partner.
He was, yeah.
You know, I used to look at teams as a central defensive partnership usually them days, as it was, because the formations were a little bit different to what they are now. But it was usually 2 up front and 2 at the back. You know, two defenders against basically 2 strikers.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah. I mean, that's sort of, we've lost that in the English game, haven't we? Now, I mean, we've got a striker at Forest now called Chris Wood, and he's sort of that, no disrespect, he's a bit of a lump. He's got no pace.
Let's say a bit
banging the goals in.
Hang on. There's no defining way that a goal scorer or someone who's going to play as a striker should look like.
Yeah,
you know, you think back and you think the days of Tony Cottee, you know, small, stocky. Clive Allen wasn't pacey, scored loads of goals. Yeah. You know, there's people, It doesn't matter what you look like.
I think that first couple of yards is in your head, isn't it? It's they're clever, they're smart players, aren't they?
Very good. It's just a knack of scoring goals. And to be honest, you talk about the traditional centre forward these days. That's what's missing. I think there's only about 3 or 4 natural centre forwards playing in the Premier League. When I say natural, people who play as a number 9. There's so many different positions coming to this false number 9, and then he plays as a 10.
Yeah.
I mean, goodness me.
So
I don't know quite what that means.
Who was your footballing hero growing up? Who did you want to be like? Who did you pretend to be on the pitch in the playground?
I've got to be honest, there wasn't anyone.
No?
No, the whole Luton Town team was...
Because they had a decent side back in the 80s, didn't they, Luton?
In the 80s, Luton had a very good side. I was at Chelsea at the time, and Luton's probably best team. It's arguable. You know, Luton supporters, and I've got lots of friends as Luton supporters, and they've all got different ideas, but generally the team in the 80s with Mick Arford, Brian Steen, Steve Foster, Mal Donaghy, Ricky Hill.
Man, weren't he?
Yeah, I mean, that was arguably Luton's best ever side.
Did he play for Brighton as well, Steve Foster?
He did, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sure he played for England.
He did, yeah.
Yeah. So, we've talked about your international career, Aztec Stadium.
Yeah.
That must have been brilliant, by the way. What was the highlight of your playing career at club football? What is the one you dream about still?
It's not necessarily a wonderful footballing moment, but it's a wonderful moment for me, and it's something that stuck with me all my life. In 1994, in a cup semi-final, FA Cup semi-final at Wembley, I was playing for Luton against Chelsea.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's the club I love against the club I supported all my life, and Chelsea won 2-0. I never scored for Luton, but Chelsea fans at the end were all singing my name, and it was quite an amazing situation where you've lost a semi-final, not going to Wembley, you probably never would again go to an FA Cup final.
Wow.
And to be singing your name, it was quite a wonderful moment and something I'll never forget.
Oh, wow.
So you've got to say that's a highlight.
So, rejected twice.
Yeah.
Went on to be a Chelsea legend, scored lots of goals, played for England. You don't get any better than that for me. But the rejection bit, how do young people get over that now these days? Because we've got the young people these days, Kerry, got lots of different pressures with social media and their peers and that. You know, what sort of advice would you give to a young 16-year-old kid now who's just been rejected by a top club?
Well, pretty much what I've just said. You've been told you're not good enough. You might not be good enough at 10. You might not be good enough at 12. Yeah. You might be good enough at 15. You might have a period in your life where things are happening and you have a dip. You've got to keep going and you've got to persevere and you've got to believe in yourself. Yeah. And you've got to take rejection in your stride and prove you can overcome it.
Brilliant, mate.
Thank you very much.
What a legend. I'm so chuffed you've been on this show. Coming up next, we've got Right versus Left with Matthew Stadlin and Charlotte Griffiths.
Hello, welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Storm Bert arrives during the next 24 hours, bringing with it a multitude of hazards, from heavy snow to strong winds and increasingly heavy rain for many as well. Here comes Storm Bert from the Atlantic, carrying mild, wet and windy weather, but also bumping into the cold air that is resident across the UK. And that means that by midnight, the rain is reaching Northern Ireland, but it's turning to snow for many, and likewise mid to North Wales will see some snow predominantly over the hills. Quickly though, the mild air arrives and turns that back to rain by dawn, and it will be heavy rain for Wales, Northern Ireland and the southwest, accompanied by increasing winds, a risk of gales in places. So a wet and windy start to Saturday for many in southern England and South Wales. Very mild temperatures at 12 or 13 Celsius first thing, likewise for Northern Ireland. But for Northern England, as well as parts of Scotland, we're going to see a longer period of snow, 2 to 4 hours through Saturday morning, and that snow is going to be heavy. It's going to be accumulating thick and fast, up to 10 centimetres at lower levels, for example the Vale of York through the central belt as well, 20 to 40 centimetres over hills, accompanied by gales. That's going to lead to blizzards over the hills of northern England and Scotland, as well as power line accretion, and so risk to power interruptions and risk of really treacherous travelling conditions. But by the middle of the afternoon, Much milder air arrives, turning that snow back to rain and resulting in a rapid thaw with the risk of flooding in places. The rain continues to build up across many western and southern parts of the UK at first on Sunday. More than 100 millimetres possible for Dartmoor, the mountains of South Wales, and it's a windy day for many on Sunday as well, with further gales the south coast as well as the far northwest. Much quieter weather arrives for the start of next week.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about.
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's time for Right versus Left. I'm delighted to thank Charlotte for returning and one of my political heroes, Matthew Stadlin. He's back for Right versus Left. Matthew, big Labour supporter. You wanted to see a Labour government win the last election. They did with a massive landslide. Have they had a good start to their first term in office since, 2007 was it when they last got elected?
Left in 2010, yeah. I think, as I said earlier, it's not been the best of starts, but it is an incredibly difficult inheritance that they've got. Now, the fact that Rachel Reeves keeps banging on about that doesn't mean it's not true. Public services, as we know, as your constituents will know, as GB viewers will know, GB News viewers, have been on their knees, many of them. And what Labour has done is put quite a bit of money in the NHS, it's put money in schools, it's put money into home building, and these are good things because they can start to set a platform for future growth. Are the optics of taking on pensioners brilliant? No. Are the optics of taking on farmers brilliant? No. But I hope they can turn it around.
Charlotte, what about the optics of taking on students and small businesses and the taxpayer? What do you think?
The optics are a disaster from start to finish. And Rachel Reeves, she's kind of doctored her CV. So even these optics are going wrong. And I think actually in the fullness of time, it's going to get worse because in the new year, we'll see what happens with the private schools, whether the state school sector gets overwhelmed, whether small private schools end up closing down. In the fullness of time, in a few years' time, we'll see about farmers, having to close down their farms or sell off their farms. So I think the optics aren't going to get better. Oh, and then, of course, he's hobnobbing around in Rio instead of being here in the UK getting on with domestic
But you're talking
problems.
about private school kids, and how many people go to private schools in this country?
Did you go to private school, Matthew?
I did. How many?
Oh, there you go.
How many of?
But it's not just that,
Hang
no,
on.
no, but it's
How
not
many
just
of us
that.
were there? How many of us are there? 6%. Why are right-wing newspapers going on and on about the interests of 6% who largely come from extremely wealthy families? You can't send your child to a private school if you're a consultant doctor. It's not sneering. I don't judge the children. I don't judge the parents. But why isn't our focus laser-like on state schools, on improving state schools, so there's no need for private schools? We're now obsessed about farmers.
Well,
We're talking about a tiny number of people who have multi-million pounds inheritance to hand over.
The private school you went to is a very, very elite private school, but there are lots of little private schools, little rural community schools, which will have 8 or 10 pupils in a year that are the heart of the community. They're going to be shut down.
Have you been writing columns for years
Eton.
and years about the standard of state school education and driving the focus forward?
Is Labour going to be laser-like about the state school sector and making sure there are enough places for displaced private school kids? And
Yes, it's been investing money in schools. I've just said, like it's
6,000
investing. That's a lot of teachers. Investing money in home building, investing money in the NHS. I think everybody watching realises that our public services are not remotely where they should be. We need somehow to invest in them, because if we have a country that is crumbling, who wants to come and live here and pump money?
Charlotte, I think this is a politics of envy, because I have a small independent school in my patch where I remember when I was working at the pit many, many years ago, men would work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, to get that extra bit of money to send their children to a private, not an expensive private school. They just wanted the very best for their kids. And they went without. They didn't have holidays abroad. They didn't have meals out. They didn't go anywhere. They just, every single penny went into their children's education. Now, if this had been around, what, 25, 30 years ago, they'd have had to take their children out of that school and put them into a normal state school, increase the pressure on public services and, affect their education at the same time. It's spiteful. It's spiteful.
I think it is spiteful, and I think they've completely overlooked people that you describe, which are those ones that just about manage to get their kids into private school and want to give their kids the best start. And everyone has the right to want the best start.
So what you're saying is state schools are not good enough then, Charlotte? What you're saying is
so why did you go to a private school then?
You have to ask my parents. Let me
let Charlotte finish, because you've had your say.
State schools aren't good enough at the moment. There aren't enough places. 6,000 teachers isn't going to bring them up to the standard. Allow some parents to scrape their kids into a private school.
Charlotte, the logic of what you're saying...
It's all well and good, Matthew. You went to a private school, had probably the very best of education in an expensive private school, and you're supporting this Labour government now that's denying that right of working-class kids to go to a private school.
I'm supporting working-class kids and indeed middle-class kids in trying to improve the state system. And what you're saying, Charlotte, is that the state system isn't good enough, because if this is such a disaster for private school parents, you're accepting that state schools are in a poor condition. And if they are in a poor condition, why are you and your paper not writing let me finish, column after column after column about improving state
It's the Matthew Stadlin show. Well, it's not the
nonsense culture.
It's not the Matthew Stadlin show. It's Lee Anderson's Real World. Let's go back to the real world, Charlotte. And we have children, thousands of children in this country with special educational needs that need to go to some of these schools, and they obviously get a bit of funding as well. But their parents need these children because they've got these have got extra needs, educational needs that some of the state schools can't provide.
No, they can't. I mean, my kids go to a state school and they've got 2 or 3 kids with special educational needs, and it's absolutely wiped them out. And they've admitted this. Yeah. They haven't got the resources to help these kids. And these kids, I feel a lot of sympathy for these kids. They need looking after. They have special needs. But they just can't be taken care of. It's really problematic. There isn't the resource, there isn't the budget to cover
to the
these
extent
kids.
that that's true, they should be helped.
Okay. The other thing is, the assisted play scheme, which Tony Blair got rid of, was actually really good for kids like that, because I'm a big believer that if you've got a nice private school, why not take a few state school kids that need extra help?
Right, guys, that was a little bit feisty, wasn't it? Let's go to the yes or no quiz. Quiz of the week this, Charlotte. The rules are very simple. Matthew's a bit of a machine at this. He keeps winning, much to my annoyance. You're going to get 5 questions, and you can only answer yes or no. No verbal ticks or it's got to be yes or no, and you get a correct answer. So we'll go for it. So, Charlotte, do you believe that Rachel Reeves' CV is honest?
No.
No.
Matthew, should Labour reverse the inheritance tax on farms?
Yes.
Charlotte?
Yes.
Wow. Charlotte, will net zero bring our fuels down?
No.
Yes.
Matthew, is the honeymoon period over for Labour?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow. And for you, Charlotte, no, give Matthew this last question. Is Matthew Stadlin one of the most popular commentators on X, formerly Twitter?
No.
From his own mouth.
Yes.
5-all. Not even do a tie break, because this could go on forever and ever, couldn't it? It's 5-all.
Well, can I say something?
Yeah.
OK. This is the problem with yes and no, because I said yes, that they should reverse this tax on farmers, the removal of the inheritance tax relief. But actually, I don't think it should be uniformly reversed. I just think that some of those smaller farms that I suspect were not intentionally brought into this. I think there's a degree of incompetence, actually. I don't think this is really ideological from Rachel Reeves, that the threshold should be raised. There will always, with any of these taxes, be people just above a threshold who will be upset. But I do have empathy and sympathy for some of those smaller farmers. It's the really big landowners, particularly those who go into it to avoid inheritance tax, that I think this policy was designed to tackle, and those are the people who should feel the brunt of it.
That's why they should do a partial U-turn by raising the threshold. They don't have to admit that they're completely in the wrong and, protect that loophole.
Is there one you want to come back on apart from the inheritance tax, Charlotte?
I just want to point out that when he raised his hand, that was because he went to private school and that's how he's been.
Oh, let's get into that.
And now
debate,
he doesn't know how to talk without raising his hand.
Are you seriously
and putting a little bow tie on.
I mean, that is such an offensive comment if you think about it. I know you're sort of trying to tease me, but state school children are well brought up. Being well brought up is not the preserve of people who went to 20, 30, 40,000 pounds a year schools. And I just come back to that point.
No, I'm just saying that private schools
I wasn't paying the
more...
fees, Lee. I'm allowed to have gone to a private school and think that the whole point, the whole thrust of private education is unfair, because I think children are born equal. Okay, so of course of course people can go and make their own money, and I understand we want to live in a free society where parents are free to choose to pay for their children's education, but it certainly can't pretend it's fair
on, Charlotte,
on children who go to state schools. Why should you have a worse education, if it is worse, just because your parents owe loads of money?
The Labour government is unwise because it's undermining things that human beings, especially British human beings, really believe in. Our green and pleasant land and aspiration for our children, and passing things down to our children, whether it's private schools or pieces of land that your family have farmed for generations. These are things that human beings cherish, and they're undermining
Let's put this to the test. Matthew, you've got a child. How old's your child?
2 years and 2 months. We've got a little girl coming in January.
You've got a little girl coming. Are you going to send them to private school?
If the local states...
Is it yes or no? Are you going to send them?
I've already lost then, so let me flesh it out. So we've got an outstanding local state school, and that at the moment is our intention. If the local state schools at secondary school are in a terrible shape, and I hope they aren't, then if we can afford it, we'll consider sending our children to private school, because I will put my own children above my own political
So
ideals.
Matthew doesn't want working class kids to go to private school, but he's going to send his own children.
How many working class kids can afford to go to private schools?
Which is state schools at primary level are pretty good on the whole, but when you get to secondary level, they can be actually, frankly, in some cases in deprived areas, quite dangerous. And parents are a little bit afraid to send their kids to secondary state school. And I really think those secondary state schools need money invested in them to make them safer places.
OK,
but until
guys.
they are, we want to protect our children.
That's a great debate. Thanks. 5-5. Well done, Matthew.
Well, I lost on the tiebreak.
No, it's not really. I'll give you that one, mate. Look, coming up next, we've got Last Orders with Chris Evangelou, who's a businessman and actor.
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
This is a topic very close to my heart. I have become fully convinced that social media, smartphones are one of the primary causes of mental health problems in children and many other serious problems beside. Lots of governments are starting to talk about this, but the Australians are well ahead in their use of legislation. What do you think about this issue?
Well, I think you're right. I mean, I've got 3 young children and I'm really concerned about... I mean, they're too young to be on social media, but I'm really concerned about what lies ahead for them. I'm not sure I support what Australia's doing, not because I don't think it's a good idea to ensure that age verification is right. I'm just not sure that the age 16 is appropriate. But that's progress. If we effectively, as I do, accept the point that we need some sort of control, then we can move to a proper debate about whether that's 16, 14, 13, whatever it may be. And, of course, there are age restrictions on things like Facebook. I think, from memory, it is 13.
Yes, but it's a tick box.
But it's a tick box, so all you can do is you can just knock. If you're 11 years old, you can just predate your date of birth by 2 years, and you can get on. I think what Australia is proposing is interesting because it will stop young people, maybe without their parents' knowledge, short-circuiting the system because they're going to be asking for proper age verification and ID. That's definitely something we should do in the UK because it's enforcing the existing law. Query, is 16 the right age, Miriam?
I completely agree with it. It's something I actually said should have been done before. And I think what is good about it is that for a long time, a lot of governments have been saying that the actual social media companies should take more responsibility, but they're not going to because it hurts their bottom line. The most voracious users are younger users. So they will pledge that, oh, I'll put the tick box in, but the kid is the one who's going to actually tick the box. So doing something like this is saying that, OK, we will put in legislation that damages your bottom line. And I think it will force the hand because they've said it's only 12 months and they will reevaluate it.
GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
That's last orders at the bar. Look at this guest here. What a guy. Chris Evangelou, former boxer. We won't say retired, Chris. Former. Boxer, actor. You've got your own gym. Is there anything you can't do?
I can't sing, so don't make me sing. But I could do other things.
So tell us about this film, The Gentleman. You was in that. I've watched that 3 or 4 times. It's a great film, man. What was it like to be in that film with them great actors?
Do you know, it was an amazing month of filming. You know, Guy Ritchie's one of my favourite directors, and when I got the audition for that, I was just so prepared for that audition. And when I got the role, I was in a barber chair, I remember, and I just jumped out with, like, I felt like I won the lottery. And, filming with iconic actors, especially like Colin Farrell, who I've grown up watching. It was an amazing feeling. It was really good.
How did you get an audition? Because I'm thinking about making a comeback and getting in a film like that. How does that happen?
You could do it at any age, honestly. When I retired from boxing due to injury, you know, I had sort of like nowhere to go, and my first love was acting. And I decided that I'm going to become an actor, and I followed that path, and I landed an agent, Mandy Perriman, who took me on. And she put me up for all different roles, but I got in through commercials, just the way I looked back then. I had a bit of a skinhead, and obviously athletic from the boxing world. And I got things like, you know, I was doing like Gillette, Lucozade, all those sort of sporting commercials. And then she messaged me one night saying, Chris, you got an audition on Monday. It's the next Guy Ritchie film. It was really secretive, so I didn't know what it was called or anything. And I just prepared for the scene. If you remember the scene in the gym, that was the audition scene, where, you know, we're talking about who we robbed, and then Colin Farrell goes mental at us because we've robbed like the biggest kingpin in the country.
So did you have to have acting lessons? Have you done that?
I did. So when I grew up, through my teenage years, I was an actor. You know, I started off in church, being like 7 years old, in front of the whole congregation, doing these little funny sketches, you know, Bible stories and that. And then I went through school and done GCSEs and A-levels. And I really worked hard at it. And I was like the first, you know, I'm going to brag now, but I was like the first ever student in my secondary school to get 100% on GCSEs. Got an award for that.
Wow.
And then went on to college, done A-levels, theatre studies, again, done really well. And that's when I found boxing.
Yeah.
So it was like acting and boxing were on par, but I couldn't do both. And I had to choose one back then.
So normally, when I do this part of the show, the people that's got a similar sort of story to tell that you have, they've normally been a nuisance at school, not achieved very much, but they've found sport or boxing, something like that, acting, something like that, and they've had that focus and gone on to have a great career. But there must have been like a trigger in your young life to become a boxer or start training to play boxer. What was that?
I found boxing because I was, I remember this like yesterday, but I was walking to McDonald's on my break at, you know, college, and I was with my girlfriend at the time. And I bumped into someone that was in my old school, and I knew he was a bit of a, you know, naughty boy.
A wrong-un?
Just a wrong-un, I'll say a wrong-un.
A wrong-un.
Yeah, and I just looked at him for like a second too long, maybe. And he just started on me, and he said he had a knife, and, you know, he just basically mugged me off in front of my girlfriend, and I felt, you know, really little after that. And I went home that night and I said to my dad, look, I want to do something, some sort of self-defense. And he literally, the next day, drove me to the Haringey Boxing Club in Tottenham. You know, top club, like tough fighters there. And I fell in love with it. And also it was a bond between me and my father as well, because my father's really big into boxing.
Yeah.
And it was just, that was when the spark was born, and that's when my story started.
And did you bump into this wrong and again at a tennis stage?
Do you know what? I didn't, but I did thank him on an interview when I won the gold medal in Sweden. I was like, you know, this is, you know, because of his name's Jonathan. You know, this is all because of you, Jonathan, starting on me, and I never got to see him again after that, unfortunately. But.
So you've been doing some charity work recently, fundraising at your boxing club. Tell me about that, please.
Yeah, so you know, myself and my brother Andreas, we own the Fit Factory. If I'm allowed to say that on here, but
Fit Factory,
the
Fit Factory
in Cockfosters. And we have a member and a client there who I train every week. Unfortunately, she's in a wheelchair, but she boxes with me every week. She's tenacious, and she does charity events where she will cycle to like Amsterdam and back, and, you know, do all these amazing things. And we thought, what can we do at the gym?
Yeah.
So we foolishly did 1 million punches in one day, and that was last Sunday. And we all got together. We raised money for Aspire charity, which raises money for people with spinal injuries, and, you know, goes in and helps them have a life and mobility, and, you know, try and make their life as easy as possible.
So a little bird tells me, Chris, that you've got another film coming out. What's all that about?
So that's it's called Mary. The star in that is Anthony Hopkins, which I was fortunate enough to, you know, be
legendary actor.
Legendary Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah.
I play the Roman captain of his army. And it's all based on finding, you know, Jesus. It comes out December 6th. It's on Netflix. And it's about finding baby Jesus, but it's from the perspective of King Herod and Mary, and how that all transpires. And, you know, King Herod goes a bit insane about it because he's going to lose his throne with this prophecy. And it's amazing. And when I saw Anthony Hopkins act in front of me, I actually forgot I was in the project, because I was just watching this absolute legend, you know.
Do you ever wake up one morning and think, wow, how's all this happened to me? Like like an imposter syndrome, that you're with these top actors and you're doing these films and you're doing all this great, wonderful
It's a bit weird. I remember having that feeling. When I was in A Gentleman, and Colin Farrell's standing there and they're doing like the camera changes, and I'm just standing there like, you know, I can't believe I'm actually standing here now, because only a few years before I decided to be an actor, and I was forced to retire from boxing, unfortunately, after I won a title, when I was at the heights of boxing, you know, Sky Sports and all that, and then being left with like no identity. And, you know, coming from a really rock bottom place, you know, that's a whole other story, but from a rock bottom place to standing there, having Guy Ritchie telling me what to do, and Colin Farrell having a vested interest in my life and me as a boxer, it was just a very surreal moment.
Wow. Now, you're behind a bar. I know you're a non-drinker. Obviously, your body is a temple.
For me here.
If you get a pint pot for me, please, Chris. This is the easiest pint to pull in the pub. That's the old neck oil. Yeah. You've got 30 seconds to pull to embarrass yourself and pull a perfect pint and plonk it on the bar. Any tips for young men or young women now wanting to get into boxing or acting?
Man,
what would you suggest? It doesn't matter, mate. It doesn't matter. Any tips for young people wanting to get?
Look at that rubbish that is.
Well, yeah, put a flake in it and stick it on the... That's a good one, isn't it?
I've done the worst, but I was putting it like a can of Coke.
Yeah, it's
there you go.
Isn't it? Yeah, don't give up your day job.
I'll give that one for free if I ever poured that one. I do coffees.
Advice for young people getting into acting or sports boxing?
You have to have the passion needs to be there, because in anything in life, but especially boxing, it's a hurt business. You've got to want to do it. You know, it's freezing outside, but, you know, I would have been up at 4 or 5 a.m. going for sprints or running, and, you know, leaving a warm bed. Waking up every day, sparring a complete stranger who you're just fighting each other, you know, for the nature of sport, the pressure of boxing as well. If you really want it that badly, you have to have the discipline over everything, you know. Discipline beats talent all day, because, you know, you work hard at something, you get better
And that trigger, Chris, that you spoke about earlier about this wrong end bullying you on the street. Now, I was watching a programme a few weeks back with Mike Tyson in, and he tells a story about when he got involved in boxing, is when somebody, I think, stolen his pigeons or killed his pigeons. And I thought, wow, this tough man, he still loves his pigeons, by the way. But it was that trigger in his life that thought, you know, I've got to do something about this. And I think it was the same with Muhammad Ali. Somebody stole his bike.
Stole his bike. And, someone, I think it was like a general of an army. I can't remember. It was something to do with the military. And he said, you know, don't be angry, young man. Go to the boxing club, and that's what started Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, so it's that. That's incredible, isn't it?
But you have to. The thing is, I was going to say, you have to have the passion to be disciplined. Like you can have motivation, and that will last 20 days or 30 days, but a lot of the time motivation can fade. You need to work on days that you don't want to be there. You need to work on, you know, your craft as an actor, as a boxer, even the days you don't want to be there. You know, and that's what the difference is.
Fantastic, mate.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's Last Orders with Chris Evangelou. Thanks, mate. That was absolutely brilliant.
Amazing pint there. It's getting better.
3 out of 10 for that. 3 out of 10. Useless.
Brilliant.
Massive thanks for joining me on Lee Anderson's Real World. Been another great show with some cracking guests. But coming up next, we've got Friday Night Live with the fantastic Mark Dolan.
Thank you, Lee. What a brilliant show. Well, we pick up the baton at 8 o'clock. Big show tonight. Should Britain follow Sweden and reduce immigration to 0? Is it time to ban airlines from charging extortionate amounts of money to carry baggage? And as an international court go after the Israeli Prime Minister, would Winston Churchill have been branded a war criminal for trying to defeat Hitler? Also tonight, as Golden Oldies Sue Barker, Phil Tufnell and Matt Dawson say they didn't want to leave Question of Sport but were forced out, is the BBC institutionally ageist? And how about this one? Rather than ASBOs, should we bring back the stocks and public humiliation for criminals? Plus, I've been looking into Rachel Reeves' CV. It's a busy hour. See you in 2.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Storm Bert arrives during the next 24 hours, bringing with it a multitude of hazards, from heavy snow to strong winds and increasingly heavy rain for many as well. Here comes Storm Bert from the Atlantic, carrying mild, wet and windy weather, but also bumping into the cold air that is resident across the UK. And that means that by midnight, the rain is reaching Northern Ireland, but it's turning to snow for many. And likewise, mid to North Wales will see some snow predominantly over the hills. Quickly, though, the mild air arrives and turns that back to rain by dawn, and it will be heavy rain for Wales, Northern Ireland and the southwest, accompanied by increasing winds, a risk of gales in places. So a wet and windy start to Saturday for many in southern England and South Wales. Very mild temperatures at 12 or 13 Celsius first thing, likewise for Northern Ireland. But for Northern England, as well as parts of Scotland, we're going to see a longer period of snow, 2 to 4 hours through Saturday morning, and that snow is going to be heavy. It's going to be accumulating thick and fast, up to 10 centimetres at lower levels, for example the Vale of York through the central belt as well, 20 to 40 centimetres over hills, accompanied by gales. That's going to lead to blizzards over the hills of northern England and Scotland, as well as power line accretion, and so risk to power interruptions and risk of really treacherous travelling conditions. But by the middle of the afternoon, much milder air arrives, turning that snow back to rain and resulting in a rapid thaw with the risk of flooding in places. The rain continues to build up across many western and southern parts of the UK at first on Sunday. More than 100 millimetres possible for Dartmoor, the mountains of South Wales, and it's a windy day for many on Sunday as well, with further gales at the south coast as well as the far northwest. Much quieter weather arrives for the start of next week.
We can expect clear skies.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe. Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
This is reported in the Telegraph today, and it's about being white or being coloured or being anti-racist. Is Monopoly a racist game?
This is an incredible story, actually, I have to say. I'm reading this from the Mail. It's in Telegraph as well, but from the Mail. Children should be playing Monopoly to learn about racial privilege.
Council's claim. White players should be given more money, spend less time in jail, and also be given a head start on buying property to convey inequality and white supremacy. And this all, I'm not making this up, and this all comes from a document called How to Raise Anti-Racist Children, which was drawn up for the Barbie manufacturer Mattel in 2020, and it's been endorsed, or at least circulated, by Leicestershire County Council, Southampton City Council, Lambeth London Borough and City of London Corporation, who apparently think this is a sensible way to go forward. I mean, for goodness sake, Monopoly is just a bit of fun, isn't it? Let's just enjoy it.
It's a wonderful example of how anti-racist thinking becomes racist. What they're saying is that white children should be given privileges on the Monopoly board.
Because they've got it in real life.
So that they learn that they already have privilege. Do we really think children are going to think that? Or do we really think children are going to think, oh, great, I have an white children are going to think, great, I have an advantage?
They're going to think, oh, no, I've landed on Mayfair and there's 4 houses there.
It's wonderfully stupid.
We've also heard it with nursery rhymes as well, though, haven't we? And mums and dads being told not to sing Bar Bar Black Sheep.
That's in the story as well, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's steeped in white culture. And what a lot of nonsense that is as well.
What are you meant to sing instead?
Well, Bar Bar, I don't know, White Sheep, perhaps, I don't know.
Or Rainbow Sheep or something.
Wah Wah White Sheep. You can say Wah Wah White Sheep as they play Monopoly with their privileges.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It is freezing brass monkeys out there, but we'll warm you up this